2, 3, 4.
Welcome to Don't Do That, the podcast where we talk about what not to do at work and beyond.
As equity practitioners, we found ourselves often thinking that folks should stop doing things before they start doing things. Hence the title of our podcast, Don't Do That. I'm Anee. I'm an equity coach, organizational equity strategist, and educator with a deep curiosity for how to improve systems and a commitment to lift others as I continue to learn and grow.
I'm Karen, and I've worked in social justice for over a decade. I'm a consultant, coach, and thought partner. My purpose is to make community matter. I do that by helping leaders create better work environments. Anee and I met as consultants and quickly became friends. Collectively, we have over 25 years of experience navigating equity, inclusion, and justice in the workplace. Don't Do That is a platform to tell stories about making mistakes at work and how to fix them. The views on this podcast are our own. We do not speak on behalf of our organizations or the communities we mention.
Welcome, listeners. Today on Don't Do That, we are talking about something that feels obvious, but often goes unspoken, even for us this season, which is generally people are not okay right now. That is in our world, in our communities, and very much at work. You've probably felt it yourself. Maybe you or others that you know just generally seem more tired, more reactive, more disengaged, or just off. And it's not just anecdotal. There's real data showing that employees are more stressed, more disconnected, and more burned out than we've seen in years. So today we're going to get into what's actually happening, what leaders and colleagues often get wrong in how they respond, and what it looks like to show up differently for ourselves and for others when we see folks are carrying a lot more than usual. So let's dig into it. So a couple things just for context. One, we are in an ongoing period of workplace disruption. This is not just a single moment. I think we've talked about this throughout the season. A body of research that I have been getting into recently is Anthony Klotz's work, and this is someone who coined the term the Great Resignation. He has a new book coming out where he talks about the relationship between these unexpected events that he has coined as jolts. And what he talks about is all of these jolts really shape employee attitudes towards work. That can include things like mass layoffs, economic uncertainty, just new ways that we're working, shifting expectations. And it's an experience that causes people to really pause and rethink their relationship to work. I think the other thing that's important to name is just mental health and stress at work at our sustained high levels. There's many articles that talk about this. Harvard Business Review had an article that talked about despite increased attention on workplace mental health, challenges have intensified in recent years, generally due to broader macro pressures, including the pandemic and just social disruption. So those surface level benefits like, having a healthy juice day at work often are insufficient. Folks have to think about deeper organizational change. And then the last sort of thing to think about is just broadly disengagement. And that is rising globally, and certainly in the US, it is not improving. There's a Gallup State of the Global Workforce report, and in the 2026 report looking at 2025, they noted that employee engagement declined for a second year, and it's at its lowest level since 2020, which is the global pandemic. So although we are post-pandemic, we are really at the same sort of point at it if we're thinking about sort of employee morale and how folks are connected to their work, which is something to note, right? We don't have that same sort of flashpoint, but folks are navigating a ton. And it's not about individual fragility, it's really about a greater context. So, folks are navigating job security, increased workloads, fewer resources. Certainly, global and societal stress that does not stop at the office door, and just increasing pressures, whether it's societal pressure, personal pressure, standards around beauty and parenting, all those things. So, what we know is leaders can't ignore that reality of what people are carrying. It requires a deep level of trust and a thoughtful approach to how people are supporting one another. So, this connection between performance and well being is not new, but it is important for us to really hone in on that if we're really going to be humans at work, right? This is like a core tenet of our humanity and general civility. And before we get into our discussion, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that for some communities, this idea of intense pressure and a lack of general well being is not new. It is perhaps increasingly exacerbated with what is happening in our global context. But if you think about Black folks in this country, if you think about women, etc., this context of if you are not okay, then you cannot thrive or be successful or show up to the workplace and do well and perform well. So while this is happening on a global scale right now, I did want to acknowledge that it is clearly not a new phenomenon.
Absolutely.
Um, so let's dig into it, Karen. What are you noticing about how people are showing up to work? Have you noticed that this moment is a little bit different? And if so, what feels new or different?
Yeah. So I would love that we are talking about this, as I think our season has like actually bookends nicely, because we started the season talking about work-life balance, and now we are ending the season talking about people not being okay and the importance of well-being. And it always feels like to be well and to be working are like at odds with each other. Um, and well-being is always like an aspiration instead of something that is tangible that people can feel and experience on a regular basis.
Yeah,
And that definitely like makes me sad, and makes me inquisitive about what we need to change, as particularly in like American culture. I think we center work, and everything else in our life has to fit around work instead of being able to center ourselves. I would say in this particular season, I am seeing just a general like languishing, and folks generally giving low vibrations, honestly. Like it doesn't mean
that's not funny, but it's funny.
I know. It honestly it feels like there are like no highs anymore, or at least if
Mhm.
they are experienced, it's very short lived. Like it feels like a fleeting firework instead of something that is sustained over time.
Yeah.
And I was facilitating a meeting with a client just last week, and I started by asking folks to like share their mood as a check-in question. And the emotions that people shared were everything from feeling like tired and distracted to concerned and conflicted, given
Mm,
what is happening in this country and across the world. So to your all of the you said in terms of setting this conversation up, I have seen it in real time.
yeah, absolutely. And it does feel um, like an increasing sort of pressure around it. And I'm not sure exactly what it could be, sort of the combination of all the things reaching sort of like an inflection point, but it does feel different from a few years ago. And I think one thing that feels a little bit different is that a lot of folks are feeling like, their work, and not just like that particular job, but generally their work career is not giving them what they are giving it in any way, whether it's like the compensation, whether it's the, benefits, whether it's the colleagues, whether it's the work itself. Um, there are a lot of folks who are like, I don't know, what is this value proposition of like this whole work thing? So, yeah, I find that like a curious trend. And I too have like questions around, is this sustainable? What do employers need to think about? What do managers need to think about? So, from your perspective, what do you think folks are getting wrong? And how does that affect sort of like general well being and performance?
Yeah. I would say that generally in most workplaces, there is an intention around growth, and like growth is needed across every like industry and place that you're in. Like, I think living in a capitalist society, that is right the goal to always be growing. And I think that can be difficult to sustain when we're experiencing a hard time in the way that we are right now. And I'll also say that I feel like years ago, maybe pre-pandemic, I know for me when I would like read certain headlines or hear about things happening, it felt like those things, I keep those things at a distance, right? It was like that's happening to this community over there. It's not really impacting my day to day. So it's good to know about, but it's not something that I have to like pay attention to all the time.
Yeah.
Versus right now, I think many of us are experiencing these impacts in our personal day to day lives. So I think about affordability, right? We're all experiencing increases in healthcare, increases in like rent or mortgages, affordability around like groceries and gas. Like all of these things impact us on a day to day basis, and our wages are not increasing, but yet the cost of things are going up.
Yeah.
And that creates financial stress, is a huge stressor. And I think many folks are in places where we're all just trying to make it and do the best we can with what we got.
Yeah. And then added to that, like macro pressures of like climate change and war right? It's like there are
Absolutely.
so many things that it is hard for on an individual level one to control. So of course, like heavily stressful, heavily stressful. And I think one thing that maybe folks are not doing well is at least just acknowledging it. Like I think to your earlier point of maybe it felt like there was like a little bit of distance before, but you know, I think the not acknowledging, even on a small level, we don't have to have a deep conversation about it, but just like, yeah, they said there was going to be a tornado level whatever in DC. Like, I don't know. We should maybe, that feels unusual. Like, are we just hopping on the Zoom? Like, does your Wi-Fi still work? Like, are your kids home? Are you okay in the basement? Do you have a basement?
Right.
So just a acknowledgement of, there is like major significant things happening around us.
Yeah. And I would also be remiss if we didn't mention the ongoing battle around immigration and
Mm,
this administration
mm,
and the way that it seriously impacts people being able to live their day to day lives and going outside or going to work as usual, going to school, right? Dropping your kids off at school in places that we frequent every day. There's now a fear of being able to do those things because
yeah,
of the way that this administration is weaponizing immigration. And, people live in mixed status families and have all kinds of different conditions that really make it challenging to live your day to day life and then want to show up at work and be the star employee.
yeah, yeah. And I think the reason why I like Anthony's work is because he talks a lot about the importance of sense making, right? So it's not just that I disagree with what is happening, it's that I cannot understand the chaos and the why behind it. It is so unreasonable that even I don't think it is helping you to get to your express goal, right? I don't think it is doing that. So it is so confusing. Like people can take, I think in the past you could have disagreed with an immigration policy, but to say, okay, I can see how maybe you got there. But I think currently our general politics and all those things are so opaque, and one plus one is not equaling two. And it is so chaotic, which is so unnerving, right? Like, it, let alone fairness. Like, it is chaotic. Like there we have no civility if we don't have order in some way. So I think a lot of it is like, and none of this really makes sense. So I don't even know the first step to take, right? So yeah. And then to your point is like, okay, and then I have to like work towards a promotion. Like, girl, what? What are we talking about? This
Well,
deadline tomorrow. Is there a tomorrow? Like,
it's true.
hmm?
The other day.
Right? Like I don't really know. So as a manager, like there are still the realities. How do you sort of motivate people? How do you keep the things going without sort of throwing all the work away, right?
Yeah, this I have to say this is a really conflicting. I'm conflicted personally by that question because it requires us to just dehumanize ourselves to a certain degree, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be like,
Mm-hmm.
we still have to get this work done, even though there's a dumpster fire outside. Like, girl, keep keep
Mm-hmm.
working. And it's like, wait, what? Are you sure that's what we should be doing? Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think it just teaches us to like deny ourselves in ways that are small but that matter. And for me, I think as a manager, I don't think managers can solve for this alone, right? I think it has to be something that leaders and executives and CEOs are thinking about and putting real action behind. Um, because a manager, yes, can cultivate like care on your team. You can check in on your team members. You can remind them of the resources and benefits that are available. But if the expectations generally of the workplace don't change, then it's not sustainable, right? You're like, everybody's situation is going to be different. And you can't really alleviate those negative feelings of concern or people being distracted if your workplace culture and the expectations that go along with that are still going to remain the same, even amongst all of this disruption.
Yeah. I think like moments like this call us to examine like the why behind all of the things, and really better understand ourselves and like the folks around us, and not just in the workplace either, like our neighbors, our community members, because I think, you know, we have to have some sense, right? Like, and if I think there is a world where like the workplace can be an anchor amidst all of the sort of like chaos, right? A best case scenario, it could be like, here's how we can affect change. Here's how we can help bring order to the world or whatever the thing is. But I think sort of getting clear on that and aligning the work towards that. And maybe in years past, there was more flexibility to say, like, oh, sure, we have some mission statement and, no one looks at it. But I think it is important in this current time to have like a clear North Star, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
And to build in breaks,
yeah.
um, because one of the things I was thinking about, especially as you were sharing some of the data, when you're in periods of high stress, one, I think that our brain doesn't function it as best as it can in terms of being
Yeah.
as productive as we are used to or want it to be. And so having those moments of like pause are really important because I think it just allows us to reset. And I know for me, in high moments of stress, when even from like just a friend perspective, of when folks are like, how can I be helpful? What do you need? It's like, I don't know. What, like, I can't even think about that. I can't even like articulate clearly what would be helpful for you to do for
Yeah.
me in this time as a friend. So, how can I even think about that in terms of like an employer from an employer standpoint?
Yeah.
So I think it does have to be it has to be intentional work by HR, by, people and culture teams, talent teams, and in collaboration with the highest decision makers.
Yeah. For sure. And I love that idea of a pause, especially in a like grow, 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 expand, move up, broaden the reach. I can understand why, some companies, especially with like shareholders, right, might feel like we can't let our foot off the gas, but like it is unusual times. Like maybe sustaining is the move, right? Like holding
Mhm.
is the right choice right now. It's not a sort of grow and growth sort of moment. It's a let's just pause and see how we can just get it together here internally.
Yeah.
Um, and earlier I talked a little bit about various communities maybe being disparately impacted. I always say that if the world is not okay, like marginalized communities are extra not okay.
Mm.
So, what, whose experiences now do you think are sort of overlooked or maybe misunderstood in the workplace, given that context that I shared earlier?
Yeah. I don't think that like we can single out any one marginalized community because I think that experiences are so nuanced, whether you are and we have intersecting identities that make it even more layered and complex. And
Mm.
so, you know, I think about women, I think about Black women, I think about queer people, I think about disabled people. Like, I think about, again, mixed status folks, undocumented folks. Like, all of it is hard, like, right now.
Mhm.
Um, I think about people in terms of like socioeconomic status and all of the things. And so, it's challenging for me to say, this group is definitely having a harder time than others because I think right now it's all hard in
Yeah,
different ways.
yeah. And I also think about how many folks have learned to cope, and those coping mechanisms have been misunderstood, right? Like, I think about how folks often tie like likability or how uh, how pleasant others perceive you to be as like, oh, this is like a good person to work with, or I enjoy working with this person. It's not always like connected to how well you execute on your work.
Mhm.
And that if you're caring a lot, if you're stressed, like, to your point of like, I don't need to be friends with you. Like, that's not why I'm here. I'm here to pay my mortgage. Like, I'm not trying to, I have to worry about, my family being safe. Like, I don't feel comfortable being vulnerable in this space with you. I have way too much, at stake. It's way too risky for me to do that. So I often think about how even different personalities. I think we've talked about that before on the podcast as well, of like for folks who might be dealing with, anxiety or different things, how that can often be misunderstood. Like the coping mechanisms can be misunderstood in the workplace when really it's connected to just well being.
Yeah, absolutely. The other piece that I think is important for this conversation too is I know when things occur, at least in the workplaces I've been in, whether that be the pandemic, whether that be thinking about the immigration policies, wars, what have you, there's always in like staff meetings, there's the announcement of like, make sure you all are taking care of yourselves and don't forget about, employee assistance programs. And that feels so insufficient to me right
Mm-hmm.
now.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
especially because I know for me personally, it's taking me time to know what keeps me well.
Yeah.
And like it's taking me time to build my own tools around self-care. And now I know like journaling really helps to ground me. I know I have to get the proper amount of sleep or I'm no good. I know that like my diet and exercise has become really important for me, being connected to like friends and having those moments of like lightness. um, but that's taken time. And I think that sometimes when you're feeling badly, and let's say you don't have a practice of like knowing what helps bring you out of that space, it can be unhelpful for someone just to say, like, take care of yourself. And it's like, what if I
Sure.
don't know how? You know?
Sure. Sure. Yep. Yep. And and I also think that a lot of people don't know how to give that to others if you don't know how to give that to yourself, right? Like I could see how someone in a leadership role would say like, just take care of yourself, especially if they are someone who is, also challenged with like their own well-being. You can't give what you don't have. So,
So, yeah. And it's
um,
a whole space to say, even think about saying that in a work context. Like, I don't know how to take care of myself. Feel,
right? Especially as a leader.
yeah, it feels very risky at
I
any
mean,
level.
it is genuinely, it is risky. Imagine like the leader of your organization is like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not feeling well. I don't know how to take care of myself. Be like, well, we're not in a good place. You're not good. We are all not good. Be
Yeah.
like, thanks for sharing that. I feel worse. Um, so before we transition into our do that or don't do that, what are some questions that leaders or colleagues can ask themselves to make sure that they're responding thoughtfully? And I'm framing it like that because I know with this, there is definitely not a one size fits all. And what I don't want to do is sort of over prescribe to say, like, if you do this, then that, or if you do this, then that. So, what are some just like thoughtful questions that folks can ask?
Yeah. So I actually, in previous workplaces, we have done this process called a sprint, where it's essentially allowing you to test certain things with a small group of people and see how that goes and continue to like refine, evaluate, and potentially scale. And I think that it would be really interesting for folks that are decision makers and leaders to think about what a sprint on well-being could look like for their organization.
Yeah.
Because for
Taking
me, I think that like if you don't approach this with that level of intention, then it's so easy to fall to the bottom of the priority list. And so
Mhm.
I would encourage folks to think about and or make the suggestion, right? Like if they're a part of the leadership team or can make this suggestion to their leaders of what a sprint on well-being could look like in order to improve employee morale and engagement and ultimately performance, I think too. But I think that's a byproduct of people being well.
Yeah, that's a great one. Um, for me, I think it's the self work to start. Like you have to put your mask on before you help anyone else. So I think before checking in with others, before prescribing anything for others, I think for sure leaders asking themselves, like, how am I doing truly? Like, am I okay? I think it's hard to offer others empathy if you have not offered it for yourself. I think if you are the person who has consistently pushed through, you took 2 weeks for maternity leave, you returned to work, you haven't seen your children in 28 years, you have, prioritized work over everything else. It's hard for you to offer empathy to someone who's like, hey, I need a mental health day because you're like, why? Grow up. Like you don't need that. So I think truly doing the self work of like, before I check in on someone else, like, let me ask myself those same questions that I would maybe be asking someone else and answering them honestly for myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Start with self is always important.
for sure. For sure. Any other questions?
Um, I mean, I think this is where like the relationship piece is really important as a leader because it's hard to get honest feedback if your culture doesn't support that.
Yeah.
And so I think there are instances where people could not be doing well and you also not know about it because it's just not an environment for people to share. And so I think sometimes hiring outside um, consultant support can be helpful so that you can get the level of candor that's necessary to like
Mhm.
address this type of issue across your organization.
Yeah. Like, who are the right folks to help us with this? And it could be you, it could be someone else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. Um, okay. So, our favorite segment, do that or don't do that. Karen, would you like to go first?
Yeah. My do that or don't do that is researching your benefits to understand what accommodations may be available to you as an employee, especially as you are having a much tougher time than normal. Do that or don't do that.
Oh, yeah, do that. Number one, you are paying for them. The company is paying for them. You are, I mean, you should tap in and maximize them. I will say my sister does a tremendous job of this. My sister is doing acupuncture, virtual PT. I mean, everything they have to offer. She is like, yep, I'm signing up for that. They had like free coaching. They had like an attorney service. It was, I mean, everything, maxing out on that. And for sure, like, why would you not research that? And I think something that is underutilized is, many organizations are often reviewing their benefits. Like, if you have a suggestion, make the suggestion. Like, that is how many organizations pivot on things they don't know until employees sort of like raise it. So, while of course everyone should be doing their due diligence to look at utilization and sort of industry trends, but what a like great data point to say like, hey, you all don't offer this, but you should.
Yeah, I love that. I also would say do that. And I feel like this is actually where AI could be very helpful and
Yes.
including like what your benefits are and letting Claude or ChatGPT or whatever your AI platform is know like here's what I want or what am I underutilizing from what's off.
Hmm. Yeah, double check with HR though. That AI be hallucinating. It'll be like, yes, we have all of this covered at 100%. Like,
Yes.
just kidding. You needed a referral and it's actually 60%. So
Yes. Definitely.
don't get caught up using the AI. Okay. Do that or don't do that. Um, Share your personal challenges that you're navigating with your team that you are managing.
So generally don't do that in terms of like I think it's unhelpful to share details or to share in a way that's like a venting session with your direct reports. At least it's the scenario that I heard. And I feel like what is more helpful, I think, is to say, like, I'm experiencing X and therefore Y is going to happen, whether that be my timing will be, more limited or my work hours would be more strict. I'm going to have a co-leader come in to
Yeah.
support the workload, like let people know the impact to the ways of working, but just to like share, to overshare, I think for me is too much.
Yeah.
Then you're like leaving people to hold it in. ways that maybe they don't know how to.
Should I be finding a solution for you? Like, you're not good. Okay. Yeah, no, I agree. I think acknowledging things without oversharing, and for sure talking about like the impact to the team, how you're navigating it, for sure. But just I'm doing bad, y'all. It's-
It's so funny that you mentioned this because I literally just had an experience where someone sent an email and like literally sent bullet points of all the bad things that had happened in their day
oh my
as to
God.
why they couldn't make a meeting earlier. And I was like, this is an overshare. And there were like 5 or 6 people on the email chain. And I'm like, I don't know.
Mhm.
How are we supposed to respond to this other than like our sympathies, right?
Yeah, yeah. But even that's a great example of I see that as a symptom of something else. Like, why did this person feel like they needed to share all of that to decline a meeting? Like, you could have said, hey, unfortunately, things have happened today, unable to make it. And key part here, here's what's going to happen next. Like, I'll send notes, I'll catch up with this person, we're going to reschedule the meeting. It's like, oh man, like,
Yeah,
like
this
we all have a lot going on.
is unfortunate and I'm sorry. I hope.
Right. Like, we were just here for the meeting.
Yeah.
We didn't need to know all this. Yeah. Okay.
Um, my do that or don't do that is should you take a day to dilly dally as a mental health day for yourself?
Yeah. Everyone needs that. I am pro 4 days a week. Controversial, but going to say it again. This is not anecdotal. There's a ton of data that shows productivity goes up, work quality goes up, mental health goes up. You can forget about the, you know, hybrid, whatever. People would even come in more if it was 4 days a week because they have the day. So
I agree.
I am pro 4 days a week and unlimited PTO. So
Same.
dilly dallying, and even like if you know anything about like the creative process and research behind that, like people need downtime and time to be bored and time for their mind to rest and all of those things. So yeah.
Absolutely. I'm
Yes.
all for the dilly as well.
Okay, my do that or don't do that. Should you send an all staff email acknowledging what is happening in the world?
Oh, that's not where I thought you were going to go. I thought we were going to go an all staff email that said something other than that. Yeah, I think that that's important. But I think the structure of that email is also important. Like to just acknowledge and move forward feels, I think it can be seen as tone deaf
Yeah.
if there's not anything related to what this means. And so I wouldn't like encourage folks to acknowledge it and leave it there. I think there has to be a part two of like what this means for our work, what our resources are available in like real tangible ways. Um, yeah, make it meaningful if you are going to do that.
Yeah. I think for me, it's also a do that, but I think the larger thing for me is you should regularly be communicating with your employees. There should be a regular sort of feedback loop of leadership to all employees. So it shouldn't be like a one off. I think there was a time there with like mass shootings and things happening in the world. And it's just like the constant one offs are tough for everyone,
Yeah,
candidly. They're tough for everyone. They're tough for the writer because at this point, what do I say? It, it's bad. I can't get creative with another, motivational, we're in this together, after the 10th one.
yeah,
So I do think it should be a part of regular communication, and also connecting it to the work, right? Like that is why I'm here. And how does this impact how we show up? How does this impact the direction of our organization? How is this showing up in how people lead or lead differently? So yeah, I think it's
Yes.
important with those sort of guardrails. Oh, awesome. I think we can move into our final thoughts and takeaways. Karen?
Yeah, I think my final thought is that this people being okay and becoming okay is a group project,
Yeah.
meaning that like it's on the individual to think about and really spend some time discovering what you need to be okay. And I think it is equally important for our workplaces to consider this to be as high a priority as hitting the growth target for the year. Um, and
Mhm.
really thinking intentionally about what about the way of working can change to support what people need in this challenging time.
Yeah. Agreed. Plus, plus, no notes. People are not operating or living in a vacuum. And we spend so much of our time at work that if you're not well at work, our communities are not well, our homes are not well, our world is not well. I think we got a little mixed up in our priorities, especially in the Western world, about work over everything, and it shows. So, for sure, I think there needs to be a reckoning and a renewed priority on this piece of it, for sure.
Well, this has been a really great conversation. This actually concludes season 2 for us, which I'm excited that we've made it into 2 seasons of this podcast and these conversations. We will be back in the fall for season 3, which we are looking forward to. But speaking of the topic, Ani, what will you be doing between seasons to take care of yourself?
Dillying and dallying for sure. I think I'm definitely thinking about how to do less, how to go for walks, how to have more quiet in my world, not be on social media, all of those things. So dillying and dallying. What about you, Karen?
I have a lot coming up. I'm going to get married in the
Oh, yeah.
fall. So
No biggie, but yeah.
definitely helped me to become okay. And I think just with that, the rituals that come along with like the pre wedding things, I have a bachelorette weekend that I'm excited about. Um, and now that like concerts are back, I really have been enjoying going to more concerts and on a day to day basis, really just tapping into like my daily routines.
Yeah.
I'm a Pilates girl and like love going to Pilates. I also am doing more strength training. So I have made a commitment to myself to center myself and center my well being and all the things that I know keep me strong. So that's what I'll be doing.
I love that.
Well, we appreciate you all listening to this episode. We encourage you to go back to listen to other past episodes if you missed anything between season 1 and season 2. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please share it with a friend or a colleague. And if you haven't yet, please be sure to leave us a review. It does help to boost our engagement. And if you'd like to reach Ani and I directly, feel free to email us at the don't do that pod at gmail.com. And until next time, remember, don't
Don't
do
do
that.
that.